The Senate now has before it for final consideration House Bill number 377. The Secretary will read the bill.
In the House of Representatives, House Bill 377 by Ways and Means Committee, an act relating to dignity and non-discrimination in public education.
President.
Senator Crabtree.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask unanimous consent that further reading of House Bill 377 be dispensed with. In the journal show it has been read the third time, section by section, and placed before the Senate for final consideration.
You've heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered, and Senator Crabtree is recognized to open debate.
Well, thank you, Madam President, and Senators. We have a very much anticipated bill. This bill relates to getting our budgets cleared through education on both sides of the rotunda. And this bill deals with policy and from germane committees. So, excuse me, but how did we get here may be of interest to you. So we worked with the higher ed bills, if you'll remember, the college and university bills a while back. And we tried to thread the needle, talking about how we didn't want so much of this social justice thing going on in the schools, particularly colleges and universities. We were concerned about that, and so we penalized one of the institutions that we thought was maybe overdoing that. Financially, we penalized them. And then we asked for a report as of January the 1st or 15th, depending on, I can't remember the exact date, but anyway, have them report to us if there was additional spending toward these ends. And then the third piece of that bit of legislation in intent language was to require the State Board of Education to make a pick list of student fees and see which one of those the students would choose not to have. And at some of the institutions, it's quite a bit of money, $2,000 at the University of Idaho, and the students would be able to then pick what they would like to do, and if they might not be interested in some of the activities and clubs that were representing the things they didn't believe in, they wouldn't have to pay for them. So those are the ideas. Those of you in the Senate liked that, appreciated the effort, and passed the bill. But our friends across the rotunda saw it a little differently, and they also talked to us about how they didn't like the things maybe in the K-12 teacher ladder budget. So we've got to recalculate. And what this bill attempts to do, Senators, is to kind of thread that needle of getting a little more policy in terms of our spending and not get it so much connected to the financial part of it. So here's how it came down. We found out that we needed to do additional things. Well, our good co-chair on this side, Senator Baer, and Representative Youngblood, co-chair on the other side, said, you know, we've got to have policy. You guys have stretched it about as far as you can in intent language in a budget bill. So if you're going to do more, you've got to do it with germane legislation through the committee process, and that's what we have done here today. So I present to you a bill that is a balance, in a balance between a lot of people's opinions over an extended period of time here at this legislature, trying to come up with what we can do to express the needs of the most, and we certainly didn't get everybody, but you will find we've got the most of the people on board with this idea. And that's what's in this bill. There's nothing brand new. It's generally a pulled-together amalgamation of existing statute put in one place to remind people about things that the legislature is concerned about in our educational effort here in Idaho. So this bill does not intend to prohibit discussion in an open and free way. It is a preventive measure. It does not indicate that we've got some rampant problem in Idaho, but we don't want to get one. There is concern that the administration in Washington, D.C. may be sending bills or sending money to us with strings attached to it that will require some of these kinds of things, and that we believe is not the Idaho way. So this bill also is kind of a preventive measure, some of that. You know, if prevention is the best medicine, then maybe that is what this bill is about. It is not intended to be punitive. It is intended to be directional. So we don't want to be beating someone up as much as we want to guide them in the types of things that we want a balance of the educational effort here. So one of the ways that I look at this is that none of us agree that we want to indoctrinate our students. We are trying to, so that's the common ground here for all of us. We don't indoctrinate, we don't want to, and we're not saying that we are. What we are trying to do is teach our children to think, not what to think. So with that, Senators, debate is open.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Ward-Engelking.
Thank you, Madam President. And fellow senators, I know there was a lot of hard work and a lot of compromise on this bill, and I know it's better than the first 4 or 5 drafts I saw, but this legislation is not needed. Our universities and school districts already have procedures in place that will deal with any problem we have in curriculum. And what's happening is we have a group that's put out in for public release comments that our teachers are brainwashing our children with a liberal leftist indoctrination. And that's simply not true. And we need to call that out. If that were true, if teachers were doing that, I was a teacher for 33 years, and I can tell you it's not happening, but if it was, we would not be the reddest state in the nation. This, I feel like this is a year when teachers have worked harder than ever to keep our children in person when they could, online, blended classes. They did it, most of them without a raise, and some of them with a cut in pay. And so instead of thanking them, this is a slap. This is a slap to their integrity. This is a slap to the openness of our university systems and free speech. And I just think it's time that we recognize this for what it is. It's a hostage situation to get our budget bills through. And I think that's a dangerous path for us to be going down when we're passing policy that isn't needed because we can't get our appropriation bills through. And that is our job as a legislature. That's our top priority for being here. And so I just think that, and I guess some of you may have heard me say this, but this reminds me of when you have your children and they think there's a boogeyman under their bed and they're really scared. But the reality is it's not real. And these things that we're being charged with, this critical race theory that nobody seems to be able to define, is not being taught, and it's not, our children are not being brainwashed, and it's time that we say no to this kind of legislation when we don't need it. We have things in policy and things in place already. Thank you.
Senators, as we move forward in debate, I would just caution you to not question motive or intent of an individual or an organization, but rather to stick to the language of the bill. Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Burgoyne.
Thank you, Madam President. I attended the University of Idaho from 1971 to 1975. I've been an adjunct professor at 2 of our universities. I've been a civil rights lawyer, an employment law lawyer. My experience is that our institutions of higher learning in this state are as conservative as this state. Not less conservative, as conservative. Indeed, the case could be made that they are somewhat more conservative because the people who are in charge in our universities tend to be people who are older, tend to be people who are charged with the responsibility of educating, generally speaking, younger people, although that has changed in the last decade, where the non-traditional student has become the traditional student. But nonetheless, if anything, I have heard from people in Idaho about our higher education institutions, it is that perhaps they are just a touch more conservative than the state. I think legislation like this feeds a narrative that is not correct, that is not accurate. And our job here should be to correct the record. We can be proud of our institutions. We can be proud of the educations that they provide to our offspring, children, grandchildren, and to ourselves. And I think it's unfortunate that the price being exacted by the body across the rotunda feeds this incorrect narrative. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Rice.
Madam President, I like to address bills on the floor of the Senate. Not motivations, not speculations about the motivations of the body across the rotunda. And so, may I read from the bill?
The senator may read, having identified the source.
No public institution of higher education, school district, or public school, including a public charter school, shall direct or otherwise compel students to personally affirm, adopt, or adhere to any of the following tenets: that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior; that individuals should be adversely treated on the basis of their sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin; or that individuals by virtue of sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin are inherently responsible for actions committed in the past by other members of the same sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin. That's a simple restatement of the same principles that have been the foundation of the civil rights movement. It's that every individual should be treated equally under the law, that no one should be compelled to believe something just because someone else does. That's the very underpinning of a free society. I don't have to go very far in my family to catch every single one of these categories. No further than first cousins. It is not wrong to state that it is the policy of this state that we will not compel people to be racist. We will not allow people to be compelled to think that people should be treated differently because of silly characteristics and silly distinguishments like this. We should never allow anyone to be compelled to acknowledge or adopt the position that people aren't accountable for what they did, they're accountable for what somebody else did. That's not appropriate. This bill doesn't attack free speech, it defends it. It defends it in the schools, in the universities, and in our society. It defends the right of the individual to not be compelled to adopt improper positions about the people around them. That's what the bill does. We vote on bills, and I'll be supporting this one.
The President will caution members of the public in the gallery to please remain decorous during the debate. Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Thayn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to echo a little bit for the gentleman from 10 and talk about what the bill does not do. The bill does not ban books. There's no topic banned in the bill. There's no book banned in the bill. It does not censor history. We can talk about anything in history. There's nowhere in the bill that something in history can't be talked about. The racism that has existed, or the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, or anything in history is not banned by this bill. In fact, it does not ban the teaching of critical race theory. It doesn't ban that. It doesn't ban Marxism. It doesn't ban anything. What it says is we cannot compel, or schools can't compel, students to personally affirm, adopt, or adhere to the following tenets, which were quoted by Senator from Thayn. You know, the United States is quite an amazing place. The Constitution was signed in was ratified in 1789. And since that time, there's been more technological progress than any time in the world's history, many times more. The previous 6,000 years was a relatively small advancements from time to time. And the United States led in that, the technological advancements. And the question is why? The reason is because people were able in the United States to take responsibility for their actions. They were able to make choices. In the old world, where our ancestors came from, there were elitist systems, there were monarchies, kings, emperors, and their supporters that controlled most of society. And what happened in America is the power of the common men and women were unleashed because they could take responsibility for what they were going to do with their lives. The issue that is concerning me, and why I think this is a great debate to be having about critical race theory and on the floor of the Senate today, is that there are those that believe that certain segments of our society cannot advance because of racism, that the system has to be modified or torn down in order for them to be raised up. What this does is it takes away their power. It gives responsibility to someone else to change their life. One of the basic principles of the United States was that each person had the power within himself to make a difference in his life, his or her life. And critical race theory, though we're not debating that topic specifically, tends to undermine the notion that people are individually responsible for their own actions. This actually goes back to prior to Martin Luther in 1517 when he founded the 95 Thesis on Gutenberg Chapel. And his real issue was that each one of us were responsible directly to God for our actions. And this opened up, the development of Western civilization, this idea of personal responsibility, personal empowerment. And I think this is a really important bill. It simply reminds us that this is the policies that have been in place in America for a long time. If there are teachers that are getting out of line, there are ways to deal with that at the local level. And this just reminds us that what their proper role as a teacher really is. I urge your support for this bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Wintrow.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me get that. People tell me I talk too softly, so I better make sure I talk into the mic. Thank you, Madam President and Senators. I want to address a point that the Senator from 8 just made that I think is important to the discussion. And he talked about the principles of the history of our country based on personal responsibility, which I uphold. I do have personal responsibility of, as we well know, how I conduct myself on the floor. However, personal responsibility is interrupted and prevented sometimes when institutions block you, right? I first discovered that when I was a girl who was a very good baseball player, and I couldn't join Little League, and my mother told me, if you just work hard enough, you can do anything. And I said, okay, I'm going to join Little League. And she said, nope, you can't because you're a girl. One of the silly characteristics that the senator from Thayn discussed. And I couldn't understand it. And I was better than most of the boys at hardball, as you can well imagine. So while I did work hard and I took personal responsibility, the systems in place stifled me. And I couldn't get ahead. And to this day, based on gender, I still struggle. Now, the sponsor of the bill discussed how we got here, which has been a really troubling, traumatic, and I think sometimes stressful time for all of us. And he discussed that we're here because even though we might not like all the language of the bill, it's a way to pass a higher education budget. And in the heart of that passing of the higher education budget in this, we've heard on this floor discussion of the social justice problem. We've heard reference to it over and over, and we've heard denigrating comments about critical race theory. So at the heart of this conversation is that. And when I was trying to research the bill, I decided I better look to see what other bills exist in the United States today. And so I did some research. As you well know, I like to do that, working at a university my whole life. And I found 7 other states that have a similar legislation passing through their bodies. Basically similar language to ours and some of the iterations, denigrating critical race theory and talking about the divisive nature of talking about race in our classrooms. So that kind of tipped me off that this isn't just an Idaho issue. And so I looked at those states and I started to do a little bit more research. And I do think that this is a reaction to what happened a year ago when George Floyd was murdered, and we saw that televised. People all over the country, estimated 20 million people took to the streets to mostly peaceful protests because blinders came off for a lot of white folks. And I remember the conversations vividly. And as white people, we've been taught that racism is an individual act of meanness and a bad word or something bad you do to somebody. But folks started to realize it's not just an individual act of meanness, it's about an institutional problem where values, attitudes, and beliefs have been interwoven into law over time. And folks started to wake up, so to speak. The blinders came off for many people. And then we saw institutions all over the country, including the U.S. military, professional sports teams, men's and women's sports, government agencies, local government, enacting all kinds of discussions about reform and to make sure that the thing that happened there doesn't happen here. Even the Boy Scouts created a badge for diversity and inclusion. Pretty awesome. Now, I think what this bill and its iterations in the history have caused me angst is because there's that risk of silencing discussion. Now, I've been assured that it doesn't. But in the very, first part of the bill, lines 22 through 27, Madam President, may I read from the bill?
Having identified the source, the senator may read.
Thank you, Madam President. It says the Idaho legislature finds that tenets outlined in subsection 3A of this section, often found in critical race theory, in quotes, undermine the objectives outlined in the following subsections based on that. Now, if you pull out often found in critical race theory, you have me a little closer in the bill. Because here now, the Idaho legislature is defining what it is. And that's not what it is. The other problem I have with the bill is it goes on page 2, line 1, if I may continue to read.
The senator may read.
Thank you, Madam President. It says in subsection B, no distinction or classification of students shall be made on account of race or color. Now, what that says to me is that when I, worked at colleges and universities, many times we have clubs and special organizations and graduations and so forth with the distinction of race. So this bill now says we can't have black graduation, but we can have rainbow graduation. Can't have the Hispanic student club, but we can have a religious club. And then in the next part, in section 2, it clearly says on line 15, no monies shall be expended by the state board, etc. No monies, not state, not private, none. So I think that's a big problem if I'm a student and in one of those clubs or organizations or otherwise. And I'm not saying that was an intentional part of the bill. I don't know. I'm not speaking about that. But it is an effect, because that's literally what it says. Now, as I kind of close down in my statements, it's hard for me to vote for a bill that we are using as a bargaining chip to pass a budget that I know is going to be harmed. And I think all this started across our country is out of fear about what I've seen on an organizational website in our state, about a fear that my way of life, the American way of life, will be challenged. And I do think that in sometimes McCarthy-like accusations, I have seen no evidence that any students have been indoctrinated. I have seen no incident documented. It's all speculation, conjecture, and a few anecdotes. Yet, we're still here, not red tape reduction, but red tape introduction for something that is not necessary. Because I can tell you, for every complaint from a white student who felt uncomfortable in a discussion, I have a pocket full of discrimination claims from women and people of color from my institutions. And I've helped those students file complaints. I have never once seen an entire program or a class closed down because of it. That's not fair. But I hope this bill does create that opportunity. And I would really end on saying it is absolutely uncomfortable to talk about issues of race and class and gender, but it's absolutely necessary. And as James Baldwin once said, famous author, black prolific author, he said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And so with an open heart, I truly hope that as a state we can have these uncomfortable discussions that don't wind up in a piece of legislation, and that we can address issues of race in our country. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there further debate? Senate will be at ease. There is no demonstration, public demonstration permitted from the gallery, from the public. Is there further debate? Hearing none, Senator Crabtree is recognized to close debate.
Well, thank you, Madam President, and I certainly appreciate the senators around the floor here that saw fit to talk about this subject, and even those who will not vote for it. I appreciate hearing from you, and your points are valid, and I appreciate you making them. As you know, this has been a long and winding road to get to this point of this particular bill. I've seldom seen one where we saw so many varying ideas that we had to amalgamate into a single piece of legislation. So I appreciate all the effort. Many of the people that worked on it are here. Many of them are across the rotunda, and we've come to what I think is a reasonable solution. We're not intending to penalize or be punitive, but to simply guide and direct our educational efforts here in Idaho. So I would close with the thought that I started with, folks, and that is that we are not trying to do anything about telling the students what to think. We're trying to teach them how to think. And that's our educational effort here in Idaho. And with that, Madam President, debate is closed.
Debate being closed, the question is, shall House Bill number 377 pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Hagenbrod, Anthem, Baer, Bayer, Burgoyne, Burtonshaw, Cook, Crabtree, Den Hartog, Funk, Grow, Guthrie, Harris, Hyder, Hogabaum, Johnson.
Madam President, 60 seconds, having not debated the bill.
Senator Johnson has 60 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, I'm not going to support the bill, and it's not because I don't have concerns that all of us do with such theories as critical race theory. However, I'm more concerned with the path we took to get here. And I think we're setting a precedent for next year and future sessions going down this road. So that does concern me. And also, when I look at line 23 of the bill, if I get rid of that parenthetical information, that is, don't give life to critical race theory on the floor of the Senate, I don't think the bill changes a whole lot from what we have in our Constitution. So I don't see that as a threat in any way. But nonetheless, Senator will vote no. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Johnson votes nay.
Lee, Lent, Lodge, Martin, Nelson.
Madam President, 60 seconds.
Senator Nelson has 60 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess I am saddened that we're here today on this bill for a problem that there seems to be no evidence for. A lot of the intent in this, I would advocate for strongly, but the way we've got here and the addition of critical race theory into this distresses me. And we're doing this when we have no time to debate all-day kindergarten. You know, those two ideas have been percolating through the Senate, through the legislature this year, and we don't have time to make a concrete improvement to our K-12 education system, but we'll work on this. It just really distresses me that we're doing that. And with that, I vote no.
Senator Nelson votes nay.
Nye.
Senator Nye has 60 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. I vote no on this for various reasons, but the main one that people should think about is the cost involved in defending this bill that is ill-defined and probably unconstitutional. And that's a personal view. By including the term critical race theory in quotes or at all, we're inserting something that's totally undefined. It's not set forth in the legislation itself. You necessarily have to guess at its meaning. And therefore, when and if this bill is challenged, my guess is it'll be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars incurred in defending a bill that we don't need, and personally I don't think we should have. So for those reasons, Madam President, with respect, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Senator Nye votes nay.
Patrick. Robbie.
Madam President, 60 seconds to explain my bill.
Senator Robbie has 60 seconds.
So I'm also concerned about this bill. I feel like we are attempting to address this social justice thing, and I don't think we all really know or understand what that even means. Or that it's a problem in our education system. You know, Boise State's social justice curriculum teaches courses like ethics, diversity, everything from Harry Potter to graphic novels. So I'm still trying to understand fears about this curriculum and why critical education budgets that we need for our students and our economy are being held hostage. And we're also potentially putting forth a chilling effect on free speech and students' ability to understand and learn a complete history of our country. So I vote no.
Senator Robbie votes nay.
Rice. Aye. Ricks. Aye. Briggs. Aye. Stennett. Thayn. Aye. Vick. Aye. Ward-Engelking. No. Winder. Aye. Wintrow. Nay. Woodward. Zito.
Roll call shows 27 ayes, 8 nays, 0 absent and excused. A majority having voted in the affirmative, House Bill number 377 has passed the Senate. Is there a correction to the title? Hearing none, the title is also approved, and House Bill 377 will be returned to the House of Representatives.